Welcome to the new Overlords Podcast, a video game show where I'm joined every week by someone who always chooses wisely. My co-host, Sema. Hello there, Sema. You know,
hey, Max.
In Podcast Host Partners, you chose wisely. If I do say so myself. That, of course,
You're
is
right.
From Indiana Jones and the Holy Grail, right? Is that the name of how you say the title? Anyway, it's the Holy Grail one. Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. I think that's the actual name of the movie. Which is an Indiana Jones movie. Is that your favorite Indiana Jones movie?
Oh my gosh. My favorite is Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Yeah, that's the only right answer, actually. So
and you can't relive that.
No.
First time you saw Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Or the 17th time you saw it.
But I will say, because of our interest this week in Indiana Jones, and also reading people's different speculations on the backstory between him and Marion, I do kind of want to see Dial of Destiny now, so I might watch that.
Yeah, I have not caught up on Dial of Destiny either, because I usually wait for the fam to get together with those bigger ones that I want everybody to see, and we haven't gotten a chance to sit down and watch that one yet. So yes, I need to watch that one as well. I am a big Indiana Jones fan of the original movie. I was never like a super fan where I needed to like follow up on the extended universe. And even of the following movies, I was, I liked them. But the original movie was always special for me because when I was growing up, we had a VHS player. My dad got a VHS player and we were poor. So we only had 3 VHS tapes. I don't even know where he got them, but we had 3. And it was Back to the Future, Top Gun, and Raiders of the Lost Ark. So Raiders of the Lost Ark, I watched literally probably 20 times in my formative years. So that was a big thing for me. It was one of those that I knew all the words to. And that's why I still quote Top Gun all the time and that kind of thing as well. Those were the movies that I watched.
Yeah.
But yeah.
If you spend any time with Max, you'll hear all the lines of all 3 of those movies.
Yes, you sure will. I usually quote Back to the Future the least out of those for some reason, but it is still good. But we will be talking about Indiana Jones. We're going to be talking about a couple other fun things too, like Secret Level and why all of these things that we've seen in the past week have just been so cinematic. But first, yeah, including some of the stuff we're going to talk about in the news.
Yeah.
Right? So let's get right into that.
Good news, everyone.
First up in the news, just a tiny little update on game dev.
Speaking of things that look awesome.
Yeah, how about this cinematic, Sema? Oh, no, wrong, back up.
It's
bees.
My favorite.
So bees were announced for Garden and a Goat this week, and I made a little video. I made a cinematic. Look at the storytelling and quality on this 20-second cinematic where there's a bunch of bees. And I do like how I did this little transition at the end where the bee flies into the camera and the title art pops up afterwards. But we have bees in the game now. That is the standard bee. Now, if people don't know, we will be developing variants. It's like a multiverse, right? First, you have to like get all the regular animals or get the regular versions of the animals in the game. But then there will be puzzles to potentially, if you want, seek out and find the multiverse versions of animals. And my team was already working on a first simple, but a first little multiverse version of the bee that I saw some art for already. But that we'll keep under wraps a little bit. Do you like jazz? Exactly. I think if you look in the comments on this video, no, this one I said black and yellow hello. I think in the Instagram one, on my daughter's comment on it, I said, "You like jazz?" Exactly. That is B movie quotes, of course. But yeah, so there's that. Also, in more non Garden and a Goat news, we had the Game Awards. We didn't talk about it too much last week, but they did happen. They were pretty interesting. The most interesting parts of the Game Awards, I think, and I did not watch it live. Forrester was asking before the show, did we watch it live? They had a ton of viewers live. People enjoy it as a live show, which I think is interesting. I don't care about it as much as a live show. I do care about the announcements and watching the trailers that came out of it, and then hearing a little bit about any of the news. The winners, I'm not all that interested in which one versus which didn't. In fact, as soon as I saw the nominees, I was kind of done with, any interesting that these are the ones they nominated. One of these randomly will win, and that is interesting to hear. Which of those 5 actually is the winner is really beside the point, as is really what was on the list. It was still interesting to see which got surfaced as their top 5, because it's not objective, it's subjective, and it's a small audience of judges. It's the games journalists that are invited to participate. There's a tiny bit of audience participation, fan participation, but it's subjective, which is fine. I mean, you gotta put together a award some way. That seems like a group of relatively informed people if you get the right journalists in. But the fact that, like in this case, Astrobot won over Black Myth Wukong, I don't think means much of anything. And it shouldn't mean much of anything to anyone, especially the people that are directly involved. So, you mentioned, Sema, that there is this random award and article written, and maybe it's more clickbait than reality of, according to this person, there was drama and all the Black Myth Wukong team was really sad.
Well, no, it was one journalist. She said one of the guys was crying, and then when someone asked her, was it like celebration crying? She says, "Oh no, he was upset that he lost." How does she know that?
Right.
But that's what sparked this whole thing about people, throwing shade on Astrobot and saying blah 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 blah, whatever.
Yep.
And then the CEO of the company, recently also made a comment that they wanted to win, and he had written his acceptance speech like 2 years ago, and then the whole thing happened again where it's like, oh, now you're arrogant, so we're glad you didn't win, all that stuff. And what they know about what he said is from an AI translation of what he said.
Yes.
No cultural filter, I could probably find you in 2 minutes at least 5 different motivational speakers who tell you to write your acceptance speech.
Yes.
The
fact that to write it 2 years ahead of time. Yes.
Yeah, as a way of envisioning success and blah 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 blah. And whatever.
Right. Or maybe he has heard about it, but we don't know.
He's allowed.
Right.
Yeah.
That too.
It's emotional, like especially if you've experienced any kind of crunch to get where you were that night and everything. And what if you had like long, late flights and missed connections, and then I don't know, who knows what was going on in that guy's mind? Not me.
Right. But again, even they, and maybe they do in their heart of hearts recognize that it's relatively arbitrary. It's, one of them had to win, and they just happened to pick another one. They got nominated as one of the top games of the year, and yes, they're going to have jet lag, and they came all the way here and they didn't win. So they're going to have to go home and sleep on their giant pile of money without the Game of the Award trophy next to it.
I mean, it's like the Academy Awards. It's a vote from a bunch of people.
Yeah.
And each person votes for their own reasons.
Right.
Like people are always trying to say, oh, the Academy gave it to her because they didn't give it to her last year. Who knows?
Right. And maybe they did, and maybe they didn't, and maybe
some
it doesn't
did,
matter.
Some didn't. Yeah.
And maybe it again. Then there was a tiny bit of additional controversy because Swen, who was the head of Larian and most majority owner of Larian, he and his wife still own most of Larian. He did the intro speech for the Game of the Year, and part of what his speech, the gist of his speech, and you can look it up. It's a good speech. Not saying it's not, but it was basically, hey, this Game of the Year, the only way to make it the Game of the Year is to make sure that you don't care about games as a business. Basically, that's the gist of it. Do it do it because you want to satisfy the players. Do it because you want to make a great game. Put yourself into the game, and that's the only way that you're going to be successful. Which is fine.
And that probably isn't going to work either, necessarily.
Right. I've got separate thoughts on that.
It's random. I mean, it's not random,
right.
but it's vague. It has its vagaries.
Right. That isn't going to get you necessarily Game of the Year, and not paying the bills is not going to get you Game of the Year necessarily.
Right, that's a short. Yeah, and when you're unable to pay the bills, but you have your Game of the Year award, you still won't be happy.
Right. But this was also misinterpreted by some people, and I think it was mostly just, and maybe it was even just a few random fans of Black Myth Wukong who thought maybe he's throwing shade at Black Myth Wukong, like that was too commercialized and that's why they didn't win, which I don't think he was at all. I think that was definitely misinterpreted.
I mean, presumably when he made the speech, he didn't know, or do they know at that point?
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. Like at the Academy Awards, technically they don't, right?
Right.
So I don't know if he did or not.
At least that's how they present it.
But then was he saying that all 5 of those games that were up there were, completely fit his vision of, see, this is the other thing. So we'll come back to Swen in just a second. Anyway, there was drama, and a bunch of fans of Black Myth Wukong were then going on to Steam and the various Metacritic style sites and downvoting Baldur's Gate 3, giving it 1-star reviews as punishment because Swen said something about another game winning that seemed like it might have been, subtweeting their game.
Well, they can't unbuy it or erase the hours of fun they already had with the game. So this is their only recourse.
So that in my mind was another thing that spun me off into this side thing of why game reviews and the game reviews on Steam are completely useless because they're used as like a tool, like this kind of tool. How is Baldur's Gate 3 isn't even involved, but it's getting downvoted because it's become the tool to express any opinion you have about anything whatsoever. You're just going to downvote a game. The second thing is, and we should be very careful here because anyone on the internet, on Reddit, on all the game forums, the game everywhere is like, Swen is a genius and is going, is a savior of the game industry by putting these brilliant thoughts forward. And yes, if only games companies would listen to his sage advice.
I really think that's all he meant by it. That he meant to say, this is how I view it.
Yeah,
whether it's workable or not, I don't think he meant to be throwing shade at anybody.
I don't think he did either. I believe what he's saying. However, I also think in my mind, what I hear is Swen getting up there and saying, here's how you make Game of the Year and make a lot of money.
He was
first
in a position to be
Game of the Year. Then
a little bit like a professional basketball player saying to, the pickup game on the street is like, well, I mean, if you just played basketball better.
Yeah, if you just try hard enough. It's a little bit of survivorship bias.
Then you could beat me. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a little bit of survivorship bias. If you only wanted it hard enough.
He was able to do it.
He could have had Game of the Year. I obviously wanted it hard enough.
I knew what I was doing.
But to be clear, he's absolutely right. You do get really great art when people are putting their hearts into it. And I think we all believe that. So that's cool. So yeah, weird of the little bits of controversy. And it really wasn't a lot. It was also, I think, journalism again, trying to look for opportunities to write articles. So it's like the smallest thing will be magnified. Sources, one guy on Twitter say that this is the most terrible thing ever. So let's write an article.
People worry about like AI taking away people's jobs and everything. It's sort of like, what if we didn't have any game journalists ever, and then if you wanted to find out about a game, you would just get an AI summary of it, and it would
Or
just be
you
like
would
what
just
the game's about.
play the game.
Well, I mean that you
Decide,
don't always
yeah.
have $70, $80, $90 to pay to,
Mhm.
but yeah, and it would just say, you know, it's this kind of game. Here's the gameplay. Here's a few shots from it, instead of
Yeah, we need like an
game journalists
AP.
trying to make a living out of riling people up.
Right. We need like an AP news for the games industry where it's just facts.
Mm-hmm.
That would be interesting.
Right. You'd have like rolling out of this machine on paper tape, and you'd be reading it.
Tick, 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 tick. Bulletin. We have a bulletin. Witcher 4 is coming out, and it will be a game, but we don't know exactly what kind of game yet.
I know.
Speculation is useless at this point in time.
He's right. Because now we're talking about the drama. But he's like, even our podcast, which we...
Right.
Yeah.
But
we're benefiting from the drama too.
Yeah, we are. True. That is fine. But Forster, it's meta. We're criticizing the drama. We're not participating in the drama.
No, but we are adding to it.
Sure.
Yeah.
That,
it's a fair point.
Witcher 4. So the other thing that comes out of the Game Awards is all of the trailers, the announcements, and there is a bunch of cool stuff. There's Borderlands 4. There's cool things. The favorite thing that I saw, of course, was the Witcher 4 trailer. As you were pointing out, because we're going to be talking about it a lot today, is cinematics. This was sort of like a great mini movie, a great sort of like a little Witcher story.
Yeah.
Definitely. The first Witcher book, the way The Witcher was invented by Andrea, is that the author's name? Was a bunch of short stories, is the original book. This is like another one of them. It sort of like tells the story and who's the monster, where are the monsters? And The Witcher carries two swords, one for the beasts and one for the men. Both are for killing monsters. This is another one of those kinds of stories. But we do get to see, in theory, things that will be part of the Witcher game, which includes Ciri. She was the star of this trailer, which I thought was pretty cool. The Witcher. Yeah. So Ciri as a Witcher. And we were talking a little bit in the pre-show. The end of Witcher 3, Ciri's story can be different. You're leading as Geralt, you're leading Ciri through some development, and it can resolve in a couple dramatically different ways. In theory, supposedly by some quotes from the makers of the game, it will be tied in that although what you see here as Ciri at least being a main character, if not the main character, as a Witcher, that no matter what happened in the game, they will try to connect it back. So in some satisfying way. So we'll see if they're able to do that, because I believe, spoiler, but I believe in one of the endings, Ciri's dead in Witcher 3. So they're gonna have to do some work for people that love that ending, and that's their canon. But we'll see. We'll see how that turns out. But yeah, you liked this cinematic? You said, Sema, you liked her?
I thought it was amazing.
Yes.
I thought it was amazing. It just blew my mind.
Yeah.
So, yeah, and really, it's not only shows like the whole Witcher thing, fighting the monster and everything, but Ciri is the one who learns a lesson here.
Yes, a lesson that in theory Geralt already would have known, and kind of. Geralt from his aura, from the first time we meet him in the first few books and like in the TV series, he's very jaded, and he
would have known not to send her back to the village.
Right, he would have known what was going to happen. Right in the onset.
There are no people here, only monsters.
Yes,
that's her final line.
Yeah, no gods here.
Yeah, only monster. Yeah,
but as she's looking at the people that were also monsters. But yeah, she's using a little bit of magic in a couple different ways. She's using a bunch of good fighting abilities, which isn't something that necessarily was the core of series style, but definitely really fun and dramatic. Nothing we can pull from this necessarily that this will be the game. In fact, IGN UK had a good little show on their podcast feed that they describe going to CD Projekt Red recently after this video came out and interviewing the game devs to ask, oh, does this mean blah, blah, blah? And they didn't get a lot of straight answers, but they did get some hints that, well, it could be, you know, we're going to try to connect it in. So I recommend go listen to that IGN UK podcast if you want to hear more on their direct experience talking to the game devs and what we may or may not be seeing as far as the game goes. We will not speculate because, of course, we do not get involved in things that aren't fact. But if it's Ciri and Geralt's not in it, then this garbage, man. Then we will rage.
I just love everything about this trailer. Like her hair is perfection.
It is the fur on the coats, and as you mentioned in the very beginning, it does say on the bottom that this was rendered in Unreal. It's pre-rendered, but you can stage the cinematics in Unreal, and you stage the camera and the lighting and that kind of thing. But this does show that this is Unreal Engine that's doing the rendering, which is really fun and nice to hear. That's cool.
A lot of things that are Unreal don't look this good, though. I mean, there's definitely skill and talent here.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. And and the staging and the scripting and the framing.
The lighting and the edit. Yeah.
Yeah.
The staging.
All right. I know wrapping up in a couple other things. We're kind of done with game releases for the year. It kind of sounds like. So now we're looking forward to what's coming next. We did get something that came out yesterday. I know you haven't had a lot of time to talk about it, but what do you, Siren Isle, is that released now? Is that all?
Yes, that's the 11.0.7 release of WoW, The War Within. It's called Siren Isle. It introduces a new daily area, kind of similar to, in my mind, it reminded me of how Najatar was in BFA and Mechagon also. So it's a new area. For some reason, we can't fly there. I think it's known, but I don't know it.
Yeah.
And so you do a little introductory quest and then a bunch of daily quests. I think they're true daily quests, like they reset at reset time, but I'm not completely sure. Yeah. So I played with it a little bit last night because I didn't want to get one day behind, but I will anyway because I probably won't get all caught up today either. So
that's bad when they
I know
make you
it
do
is.
that. That's what makes people quit. Blizzard, don't.
But I did. There's another thing going on in WoW right now, which is Secrets of Azeroth, which is a thing where there's something that's secret, and there's a whole community of people that are finding out what the secret is, and so they go to all these links. And so now they've gotten to the point where the entire secret is known and documented. So I'm trying to walk through those steps. And it requires you to have toys and pets and mounts from a bunch of different X packs, and they had to figure out that you had to go to this part of the world and like stand on one hand and burp, and I don't even know how their minds work so they can figure these things out. So I started doing that a couple of days ago, and I don't know, I kind of find that fun, even though they already figured it out. It's hard enough for me just to follow the directions.
Right.
And do it. It's challenging enough that I have fun doing it. And then like I might have to go back to some X packs and do a little bit more of something to get the rep, to do something to get the item that I need, or I might not need to. I don't know.
Interesting.
Depends on
and
how
is
it
that
turns
part of
out.
the anniversary sort of like like going back and touching things?
So there's a part of it that's required that you do the anniversary.
Yeah.
But I don't think that I don't think you need to complete. Yeah, so it's related, but I don't think you need to complete it by the end of the anniversary, which is coming. The end will be in January.
Oh, cool. Well, that's another kind of like fun idea to draw people back into remembering all of the content along the way. That seems like a
Plus, this
fun
week
approach.
is Cataclysm time walking in retail, which is kind of meta for us.
Yes. In retail. One of the
Yeah,
6
we
WoWs
were
that
playing. Yeah, we were playing Cataclysm when we switched back to retail. So now we get retail version of time walking Cataclysm.
Yeah. So you could play Cataclysm in multiple WoWs right now. Classic
Well,
Cataclysm.
yes, except that we can't raid in Cataclysm because we stopped to come over here, so we don't have the gear to do the raid in actual Cataclysm. So we'll probably take a look at Firelands tonight, the time walking version of it with our retail characters.
Nice. Which is nice.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So that's the news. This podcast is brought to you by Garden and a Goat, the upcoming game from Contemplation Games. Also by Alea Iacta Est, our guild that Sema and I tend to play with from time to time, aie-guild.org. Get into the Discord there and jump in. I think there's fun things happening even this week in Star Wars The Old Republic, for example, and all of the games. This is also brought to you by all of you watching, listening, and in the chat room right now. Thanks a bunch. It's really fun to have everybody coming and hanging out and listening after, asking questions and chiming in. That's what makes us want to continue to do this show, and we will continue to do it as long as it is fun. And if we haven't stopped now after 10 or 11 years now, maybe we won't ever. How many years has it been? 2013. So yeah, I thought we were going on. Maybe it's been 11 years.
Something like that.
Something like that. All right, Sema, listen to this.
There's strength in repetition. There's strength in repetition. There's strength in repetition. There's strength in repetition. There's strength.
That got me. That is from one of the secret level episodes, the Pac-Man episode. And when I got to that, and my interpretation was, it's just a very gamer concept. The idea of just banging your head against the wall and repetition for some reason being just compelling. That vibe is just a very gaming kind of concept in my view.
And not even just modern games. It's from, all time.
Right. And even more so, your point was, which is a salient point, that was from the Pac-Man episode. And you go back to those days, and that's all it was just repetition. There was no ending. There was no, you couldn't win.
Used to play this solitaire game that I forget what it was called, but the win rate on it was like, I don't know, 1 in 100. So, I mean, and that's playing cards. That's even before arcade games.
Yeah. Yep. I watched all of the first 8, and they did a weird thing. So Secret Level is out. All of the episodes are currently out, the 15 or so that they decided to put out. They put out 8 of them, and then they waited a week to put out 7 more. And in theory, they wanted to, I saw an interview with one of the show creators, they wanted to like build a little hype and drama in between. Seems like a really short window to do that if it's only a week. I'm surprised they didn't spread it out longer, but okay. So that's what they did.
But each of these episodes is like 10, 15, 8 minutes. So like
yes.
8 of them is like
1 episode's worth of content. True.
Right.
True. That's a good point. So it's almost like putting out 2 episodes, 1 a week.
It almost could be that somebody at some point just shoehorned it in saying, well, how long, where's a good breaking point time wise? Okay, let's do here.
Yeah. Yeah. It's too many hours of content. Let's just split it up, but it would be too short amount of content to only put out 1 a week. Maybe that would be the case.
Yeah.
But it is good. It's good. It's good stuff. I am enjoying it immensely. As I said, I did the first 8 and you did another half dozen at least, but some from the first and some from the second, correct?
Yes. Because when I started watching these, they were all available. So I just started clicking on the ones that looked the most interesting to me immediately. I started with the D&D one, which is the first one. I was gonna go in order, but then I didn't.
Yeah.
Just started cherry picking. Um, but I mean, let's talk about the D&D one. I thought for a first one, it was a great way to start. I mean, just out of the park. And I loved
Yeah.
how they made. Here's what I got from it is that they had every ounce of respect for D&D that you could have, and they portrayed each character with such respect and made them so interesting and so heroic, each in their own unique way.
Yes, I agree. They
That
did
really got me. Yeah.
a spectacular job.
And the whole thing is, I think, 10 minutes long, and it's really telling they call them featurettes, but it's more than a vignette because it does have like a beginning, a middle, and an end. It's just very short, and it does tell you there is an outcome to it. I'm hedging because I don't actually want to say what the outcome is, but that one, if you don't watch any of them, if you weren't going to watch this show, just watch the D&D one. It's 10 minutes. That'll give you some idea whether you want to keep going.
Right. And it will sort of explain what they're doing, which is telling a story. It's not trailers for games. They're telling a story that's set in the cinematic universe of a game, or even like D&D has been a lot of games, and Warhammer is a lot of games. So it's sort of like set in that cinematic universe, not in any particular game title. And then it's not a particular story, although some of them were relative, were much more aligned with like the Unreal Tournament story is actually pretty close to the Unreal Tournament origin story, if not exactly. So yeah, it's really good.
And it's their art and their assets too. It's their vision of that game's universe.
Yes. Yeah. Right. They're not taking it's not like they're not doing in-engine cinematics or, stitching things together. They're creating new art to sort of show it off.
And if they did that thing that you just said, like taking that and stitching it together, it'd probably also be fantastic. But this is a different animal.
I'm sure different ones will resonate with different people in different ways. Like here's a Game Rant article which ranks them all, and they're completely wrong as in terms of their ranking. But I'm sure there will be a ton of that.
Which one did they rank number one?
The New World one, I believe, is what they put as number one.
That one is very entertaining. And appealing.
It is. It's definitely good. It's probably in my top 3, but I wouldn't put it number 1. Maybe not even top. Maybe it's number 4. There's some really good ones. So I did really like the Dungeons and Dragons ones. I think that was such a strong start and such a good story. It's sort of like the story arc.
Right.
I really like the Unreal Tournament one.
There's magic, there's fighting, there's redemption, there's death, there's everything
there's
in 10 minutes.
Character growth. There's in 10 minutes. They really tell a story. I think the Unreal Tournament. Now I'm a sucker for like the robot uprising, the AI becoming sentient.
Right.
So I really liked that one. That's definitely one of the top ones in my view as well. Visually and just in terms of spectacle, the Warhammer one is crazy. It's crazy violent, but just visually filmed really well too. And the pacing and the directing of that was done in a really interesting way. And someone said it really does follow from the other work that the director has done, the pacing of how the fight goes. Like there's like just this giant burst of violence and then a pause, and then another burst of violence and a pause. And then it flips over. They like go down into like an underworld, and they're fighting some demons. And again, just coming from the shadows, they're coming from off screen, burst of violence and a pause. But in that case, the blood of the demons is bioluminescent or whatever, it glows. So now you've got that, the shadow and light and the glow, just graphically and cinematically, just amazing. But the story, I don't think the story is as interesting. If you're really into the Warhammer universe, you'll be excited. And if you know all of the lore of Warhammer, you'll be excited. The Sifu one I thought was pretty good because it's a style of, it's more of a cell shaded style and like an anime style. And so visually, again, I thought it was good from that perspective. Right. And some really nice quiet moments in that one as well. And then this is the one we probably talked the most about because it's the most abstract in some ways, both in the source content and the story and the message. And in that way, I love the mystery of what's going on as well. It's the Pac-Man one. So that's
Definitely, it's not what I was expecting.
Right. And if you had told me or suggested that someone was going to create a Pac-Man cinematic, this is not what I would have.
No, not in a million years. I could have come up with 100 things before this.
Right. So it is crazy, weird, wild, but I really, really liked it as well. And then I think, as Sema and I were tossing it back and forth, I took away a slightly different message. It was similar, but a slightly different message than what Sema did. And just like the mystery of what's going on, my interpretation was slightly different, but it doesn't matter. The art, that's how art is. It's not intended to necessarily be solved.
It is Pac-Man Circle is this piece is based on an upcoming spinoff of Pac-Man called Shadow Labyrinth. I don't know how similar that game will be to this cinematic, to what Blur did here, but you will be playing as that guy.
Which is interesting.
One article I read. Yeah. Yeah. So this is like, they have one that's about a game that's already canceled, and then this one about a game that hasn't happened yet. So 2 interesting choices.
So
many interesting choices, but yeah.
Yeah, that to me is interesting because I thought the guy, which is sort of like this androgynous alien dude, was the less interesting part of that story. I was, by the end, I thought he was the main character, and then by the end I realized he is not the main character.
This one for me was kind of my so far least favorite because I felt like it dragged on.
The Pac-Man one?
Yeah.
Like
I felt like I get it now, so do I have to keep watching it?
Yeah. You have to keep eating. Yeah. Oh, and more eating. Okay. I did really like the Armored Core one, only because it's like Keanu Reeves doing cyberpunk crap and just like the cyberpunkiest of cyberpunk stuff, and him doing, I mean, he's almost playing a version of Johnny Silverhand in some ways. Like you get a little bit of that flavor in there, just like a little bit of self-loathing, self-destruction, but using cyberpunk and high-tech, low-life feel and to sort of tell that story. Weird and interesting and fun as well. And then the New World one. So I know you didn't get a chance to finish it. Ironic, it's only like 15 minutes.
15
but
minutes,
I pulled you away so we could start the podcast. But Arnold Schwarzenegger voices the main character, who's this king that crashes in Aeternum, the New World land. And he's very full of himself, and he speaks of himself in the third person, and needs to learn that this isn't how things work in New World Aeternum. And again, there's some very video game life concepts, like Live, Die, Repeat is the subtitle of the episode. The once and future king, Live, Die, Repeat. The whole Live, Die, Repeat, again, is a video game idea that's very wrapped into the story and arc of what goes on here.
And I know this is not the first time for Arnold Schwarzenegger to do this, but I just love it that he is aware and actively poking fun at his own type of persona that made him famous.
Yes. Yeah, which he definitely is, in a really fun way. in this one. So I agree with that. And he plays that. He plays that kind of like meathead, self-absorbed. I'm the king. Look at me. Look at my giant. At one point, the character is like, "No, I don't need the breastplate. Let them look upon the majesty of the king, of their future ruler." And he's got his like chest out there. That's like such an Arnold thing. He keeps flexing constantly. I'm still alive. Can you believe it?
An army does not make a king. A king makes an army.
Okay. Who cares if all my men are dead? The army does not make the king. The king makes the army. Oh, look, my arm has grown back. I'm so glad I'm not maimed, a half man. Go through eternity as a maimed, lesser human like you. His friend only has one arm. So it's got a lot of humor built into this one, and it's definitely a departure.
By the way, saved his life.
Yes, multiple times.
Right.
Yeah, but more like saved his life and ultimately sort of like saves his soul as well. In a really
Oh, now I really want to watch the end.
Good way. So yeah, it's also much different tone than a lot of the other ones, which I thought was fascinating in some ways. So it was fun to see. So I was pretty happy with that. All right, Sema, Indiana Jones.
Don't you want to know what this is all about?
You're damn right I do.
No time for love.
Indiana Jones, don't you want to know what this is all about? You're damn right I do. Boy, let's start with that. Let's start with the voice acting. And
oh my God, the voice acting. Troy Baker, who's doing the Indiana Jones part, fantastic. I mean, I never once thought, oh, here's someone doing a Harrison Ford impression.
Right.
It just immediately was like completely natural. How do people do that? I do not understand. That was just, and here's a guy who's already famous for his body of work, already has all the success behind him, and then he can just pull this out of his back pocket too. I mean, I was just amazed.
Very, very good. And a really big part of sort of the immersion and keeping you into the game and the universe, which is sort of like the whole point of this, right? It's the whole point of the game is for you to be in an Indiana Jones movie, which I think is interesting. I think it's an interesting concept. So what we've got here is very cinematic experience. It's a very interactive movie experience. And in fact, I was surprised I liked it as much as I did in the fact that it is an interactive movie experience. The edges where I expected there to be more game, sort of like there isn't as much game. It's very immersive. You're immersed in the world, but in the place where I would expect more video game to happen, like, well, can I run around and do side missions to get, to build up currency? Nope. What about crafting? Can I make like a little, more ammo for my gun? No, you can't. Just play the movie, please. So I would think that would be a problem for me, and I would think that I would miss that, but I didn't. Every time I was playing it, I kept really getting pulled in and immersed. So it really did a good job of doing that, which I was surprised at how well it was done. They start you off in the original movie, playing through the opening sequence where you're going into the tomb to get the golden idol, and Doc Ock is there with you.
I've talked about this before, that games struggle with like starting areas, and this is not a starting area, but it's kind of fulfills the same role because you're immersed in this story that you remember.
Right.
And you're playing each scene, which, by the way, I went back and watched this in the movie, and a lot of it is just like scene, action for action, line of dialogue for line of dialogue, the same. But while you're playing this familiar thing and getting sort of immersed in the game, you do learn a few things about combat and how to move and all that stuff. So
Yep.
it is in a way a tutorial, but it's a tutorial that's interesting,
Right.
which games have been it's sort of the holy grail of starting areas. I don't think any game has
It's the
done it.
lost ark of starting areas, not the holy grail. Sema.
Yeah. I know, get this right. So I was very impressed by that.
Yeah, no, you're right. It really, I think it did two things. One, it was a nice way to do a starting area, as you're exactly saying. And it did. That was what it was doing. It's teaching you the controls, teaching you the fighting. You only do a couple different things. Also teaching you to look for traps, solve a puzzle, that,
and
that
how,
kind of stuff.
Sort of how you switch back and forth between I'm Indiana Jones and I'm watching Indiana Jones.
Right. Yeah. Let's come back to that in a second, because that's sort of like a big deal. But it also gets you into the idea that this is a cinematic experience and grounds you, as you suggest, in a scene that you're familiar with. So this is something that anyone who knows anything about Indiana Jones, you've seen a million times. You've been it. Now you're playing it, and now you're getting the sense that you get to live it. Instead of like seeing it happen, you are going to be in it. You're going to live it. You're going to be the one who puts the bag of sand and swaps it out for the idol. You're going to be the one whipping your whip up to the ceiling to swing across.
Mm-hmm.
But it's doing it in a place where you remember enough of it that it connects it all together in your brain, I think, in a really interesting way. So I think it was, at first I'm like, why are we doing this again? I know all of this. I've been here. We've seen this a million times. Well, that's kind of like the point in some ways, I think. I think they did a good job of just sort of like connecting it in and grounding you in the reality of where you're going to be and how things are going to work. So it starts there. Then it brings you into the rest of the action. It is first person. So what was your sort of... Now, you and I have talked about this before. I typically would prefer it wasn't first person. Any game.
I didn't. Well, I actually didn't look for a way to make it third person, but I assume there isn't a way.
There is not, and I did look. Because we've talked about it before, because I was curious. However, it does switch to third person relatively often in a weird way. Not in a weird way. It's weird that I don't think it's weird. Let me put it that way. Anytime you climb a ladder, anytime you whip your whip up to a rafter and start climbing the wall, or like climbing up your whip, anytime you switch over to a cinematic, it suddenly goes third person. And thinking about it outside of that experience, I would think, wow, isn't that weird? And isn't that jarring? Aren't you like taken out of the experience then? It's going to like throw the players off. But playing in it and being in it, I don't know. It doesn't. It seems really seamless. How did you feel?
I thought it was very sort of intuitive. Like at first I was in the very first scene when you're there with your three guides, for a better word, they're walking ahead of you, and I'm just watching them walk away from me, and then they stop.
Right.
And I'm like, okay, I guess this is because I was watching Indiana Jones before that, and I go, okay, I guess I walk forward now, and I did, and that was, once I figured that out one time, it was, correct all the rest of the times.
Right.
So, yeah.
Right. Yeah. It's interesting swapping back and forth to get a little bit of that third person view when you kind of need it for a gameplay ability, like climbing up a ladder or something, I hate climbing ladders in first person view. So that does work well. Cinematics are obviously all third person view, but the flow between the cinematics and the game seems natural. Seems to work well in my view. So yeah, that all I think turned out pretty well, and it is a very cinematic experience. You're playing a movie, and in fact, the game things that you do, I think, are relatively shallow. You do some fighting. and most of the fighting is melee combat. It's you just punching or picking up random things off the ground and
And you
hitting people
can do
with them.
different things with your whip too, like
True.
knock people over by whipping their ankles and
Yeah, I keep forgetting to do that. I just punch everybody in the face. I try to pick up the biggest, heaviest thing around and then just punch them. But you only get a couple good whacks in, and then the thing you're holding breaks. So it doesn't last very long. And then you have to pick up another thing. But you can pick up anything. You can pick up a brush, a dustpan, a rock, and then you hit it. You can throw it at people and you can hit people with it. So I did plenty of that. I did plenty of smacking people in the face. You do have your gun and you do get a limited number of bullets, but the game kind of explains to you at some point, like maybe a tooltip pop up that comes up and says, be careful when you use your gun because you're really up in the stakes. You're escalating the situation. You pull out your gun, then you're going to get a lot of guns pulled out and pointed at you in that case. So I haven't bothered to do it, also because I don't like the idea that ammo's so limited. So I keep just not using the gun ever. I don't think that that's necessarily the intent either, but it's been working. I just keep hitting people, hitting people in the face.
Which difficulty level did you pick?
The regular. There's like the easy, the regular, and the hard, I guess. It's like 3, right?
There's 4 because there's a very hard also.
Oh, okay.
But it was off you had to scroll over to see it. I picked the easy one.
Okay. The regular was pretty easy as well. I think I did get knocked out a couple times or get killed a couple times. Mostly it's because, and this is something I found a little bit strange, the rules of the world aren't exactly clear. So who am I allowed to punch and who am I not? And when do I need to be stealthing and when can I stop stealthing and start punching? It's not exactly clear because there are some situations where if you start fighting the guards, then it's wrong. You broke the rules and now you will get almost like infinite guards. So I did notice that a couple times. So there's also other situations where you're doing a lot of exploring and running around, and like the first opening act or first third of the game is at the Vatican, and you're dressed up as a priest, so you're in disguise as a priest. But apparently no one's fazed by a priest like using a whip to climb up scaffolding and scale a wall. So that's okay. That doesn't break your disguise. I guess priests are just doing that all the time at the Vatican. So that I thought was interesting and a little bit weird that's okay. And that's part of that's in universe. That's okay. But yeah, and sometimes you can like punch people and knock them out. And if their body gets discovered, it's a bad thing. But sometimes their body just won't get discovered. You could just like fight everybody if you want. Like when you're down in the catacombs, I think you could just like fight everybody and knock them all out. So there's that part of the game where you got to kind of feel out what the rules are, and then you can play it a little bit how you want, but you kind of got to play it how the game wants you to play it too. There's exploring, and there's a lot of puzzles. So into this scene that we're seeing right now is like down in one of the sort of like the more catacomb areas in the Vatican, and you need to solve the puzzle of how to open the wall. And the game does a lot of like, I think in some ways, I think it's a little bit too much. I know they're trying to make it a game and give you gameplay, but did you get to like opening any doors? I'm sure you did.
No, everything I tried to open, I could just do with a key press. So I didn't get too much into the puzzles.
Once you get like a key to open a door, it's like 3 button presses to open a door. It's like you press tab, it pops up the key automatically, but you have to it shows it up on the screen. You have to press tab to like equip the key. That's all. You don't need to like find it in your inventory at least, but you do need to press tab to equip the key. And then you need to press E to put the key in the lock. And then you need to press D, which is the right arrow, to turn the key, and then sometimes you need to press W to push the door.
Mm-hmm.
It's like strangely a lot of work to open a door.
And like when I was trying to run out of the temple in the beginning, it's like Control LPQ spacebar or something to sprint, and like Control and L are like not even close to each other. And I was also supposed to be like I had to drive with my mouse so that I didn't just run into the wall. So it's sort of that was weird to me.
Right. It's kind of point and click, but they like make you move in weird directions or press extra keys sometimes. I think maybe to make you feel like you're doing more work.
I actually think that in that example I gave, it's like the B key on your controller.
Right.
And so they just the way it got ported to PC keyboard was just weird.
It could be more natural on the controller. That's true. I was playing it on the keyboard as well. But still, it's like you gotta solve the puzzle, and there's a bunch of levers. Well, you gotta like press W to move that lever, and then press A to move it back the other direction, and press W again. Don't you feel like you're actually moving the lever? I would have been fine. Just click. Can I just click the lever? But they're making a game out of it. Stealthing is a big part of it. Exploration is a big part of it. But it made me start to think about what's actually going on here. And it is a cinematic experience. We are playing a movie. And how much of what we're playing would it have been better, or would it have been a really good experience also? Or could we switch back and forth between just like watching this as a movie? And I kind of thought both would be good. This would work. Just the quality of the script, the experience, where you're going, the set locations, the characters are great and really fun, but wanting to experience it potentially just as a movie, I think could really work. And I don't know. I think I would be okay in some situations with that. Like, I know it would take away from the idea that you have the agency and you get to be Indiana Jones, but still Indiana Jones, and it's his story. I don't feel like it's my story.
It is kind of a mystery to me, because like I feel like maybe I would prefer to just watch it as a movie, because I find the to have to stop and fight somebody to be kind of distracting, but I know tons of people fighting is the funnest thing about a game. So
right, but it's not that fun of fighting. It's not like a really it's not like a good fighting game.
That's a good point. Yeah.
So then do we need the fighting in there? And then it's such it's weird how they still suck you in and they still make it so good of an experience that when I'm playing it, like I've played it at least a dozen hours now. When I'm playing it, I just keep going and going and going and living in that world. And I keep thinking I should not be liking this. I should be bored now. I should be done and just just wishing that I could just watch this as a movie. But then I keep playing and I like it.
I like the whole thing about the collecting the books and finding the books to get new powers or talents, whatever they're called in this game. And I really, really love the covers of all the books, the different art. It's stylistic and fantastic. I just love it.
The world is very well rendered and does help immerse you.
Yeah.
There are sort of like the slow parts, I kind of think. And I was getting into them early in the game, and then I sort of like stopped getting into them. In theory, there are side missions you can go do, like find all of the 12 lost idols that are strewn around the Vatican. But after a while, that gets kind of like not interesting. It reminded me of, and like the travel, like wandering around trying to find your way to St. Peter's Basilica. okay, I get it. I'm really immersed in this world, and it's still good. And I get to like see people as I'm walking by them. And Indiana Jones, because again, he's in disguise. He keeps saying, they'll say, "Oh, hello, father," and he'll say, "Oh, peace be with you, sister." It's like he's doing his Indiana Jones thing. But it made me think, like, would Raiders of the Lost Ark have been better if, there's the scene where they get to the ancient city where there's the map room and they have to like dig in the sand overnight. He and Sala are like digging in the sand overnight to get to the Well of the Souls. What if you could physically, for an hour, click on the screen to dig in the sand? Wouldn't that have made that a much more immersive experience? Well, I guess that would have been really, really boring. What if we showed like 20 minutes of Indy and Sala digging in the sand? Wouldn't that have been?
What if it was 20 seconds? Because that's more what the game is like.
In some ways it is, but in some ways, if you want to like do the side things, it's not. I mean, you got to like wander. Like a couple times, I got lost wandering around, and I'm like,
yes. Wandering around is one thing, but there's no point in the game where you click on the same thing for 2 hours.
No, not clicking. But if you wanted to like collect all the idols, you'll do that for 2 hours easy.
Yeah. And that would be playing the game. Yeah.
Right. And there's not much beyond that though, of like click to explore. Like there's a couple collecting quests, but there's no other sort of like game. There's no game mechanics to immerse yourself in to like play a game part. Like there's no crafting, there's no gathering, there's no like early in the game you need to collect some money to get a camera, because the camera is a key component of the game, which actually is pretty cool and it's well handled. You use it to sort of like discover things. That's how you're, instead of like a magnifying glass on the ground, you're using the camera. You use it a lot. But to get the money for the camera, I was like, oh, okay, I got to collect some money. So is there like, can I like find some artifacts and sell them? Can I like craft something? And no, you just find some money on the ground or on a table. And you just take the money. Well, but no, there's nothing you could do to get money. Stop trying to just pick up the money. There's money right there. The bad guys, like, see how they have the money laying out? Just take that and then go buy the camera. So there's not like game systems that you can get into. But again, still oddly compelling, regardless. So I've been having a lot of fun with it, and it's a very well formed game as a result. Last one. Let's wrap up with the characters. I think it's a really good cast of characters. Main sidekick throughout the story is Gina Lombardi, and she's on a mission to find her sister. She's a journalist, but also sort of like a little adventure journalist. So she's got skills of her own. In fact, the lock picking mini game in this game is you step aside and let Gina pick the locks. And
apparently in the 30s,
there's
there's like an adventure version of every profession. Like Indiana Jones is an adventure professor, and she's an adventure journalist.
Yeah, I think so. And the priest, you get a sense of what's his name, your priest friend. I'm scrolling down. You got Marcus Brody, who shows up. Father Antonio, he's a great character. He's fun. Really nice guy. Loves jazz. You like jazz? He likes jazz. You bring him a record as a little gift. That's really cool. Marcus Brody's excellent. Plays himself as the digital person that he is. A couple good villains you're introduced to. Locus, which is like a big giant guy. Emmerich Voss, the quintessential Nazi bad guy, creepy Nazi Third Reich guy. Then there's the other Nazi who's Victor Gans, Colonel Gans. He's the creepy Nazi soldier, whereas the other guy is like the creepy Nazi scientist. They do a good job. Mussolini shows up. You get a cutscene with Mussolini in it. You're fighting at the Vatican. It's all the fascists. Once you get to Giza and beyond, it's a lot of Nazis. So yeah, it's good cast of characters. Boy, Gina Lombardi is a really good character, strong character. So that's really fun. So yeah, great game. Great settings, and just so well put together that all of the things you would think don't work just do. And I think it's brilliant in that way that they were able to sort of pull that off. So that's cool. Cool. All right. Well, I know we broke the podcast in the middle for the people that weren't here. Sort of missed that.
Yes, we did.
I'm like breaking. Stop fiddling with this.
One thing about this whole Indiana Jones story, all of it for me is looking at it now as an adult. Like when I was a kid and I watched Raiders of the Lost Ark, Indiana Jones was clearly the good guy and Belloc was clearly the bad guy. And now I look at it and they're basically both they have the same goal, which is to be a thief.
Kind of. Yep.
Well, no, it's not kind of. Like that was not Indiana Jones's idol. That was somebody else's.
True.
But he wanted it.
But it belongs in a museum, Sema. He was rescuing those artifacts, which is like now, in our modern day view is obviously, no, you're actually just stealing that.
Right. No, and I think he knew he was stealing it too.
But not for money, for
fame or whatever his
to preserve the artifacts in a museum. Yeah.
I don't buy that at all.
Okay.
I think it was being preserved just fine where it was.
So you think Indiana Jones is the villain?
No, I think it's a way more layered thing that they're both villains. Belloc is willing to be more evil in his methods, but they want the same thing. It's not a, put the rightful heir on the throne story. Which
True.
Again,
yeah,
it's not. He's not saving children. In fact, he's having romances with them.
True.
That's his history with Marion.
Yeah. I think
he's a complex character. I mean,
and he was designed that way. I mean, it was explicitly designed that way. There's conversations between Lucas and Spielberg where they deliberately made some choices in the backstory of, and you like the Marion part of it, where she was basically a student when they first got together. And
not his student, but a student. But she was not a college student. She was like 15.
Yeah, 15, 17. I thought she was like 17, but it's still whatever. They deliberately made her underage in his backstory. Not explicitly, they don't like come out and say it explicitly, but they allude to it in the script.
Right.
I was a child. You knew what you were doing.
But he was not her professor. He was the apprentice of her dad. That's how they knew each other.
Yeah. So he was, he wasn't that much older than her. He was still, 20-year-old as well.
No, 25.
25 at the time.
Yeah. From what I've read in the last couple of days, but still not an angel.
No. But still makes a compelling layered character that obviously is working for these adventures.
Part of the reason why I do kind of want to see the last one is because they go full circle back to that and they tell some narrative around the whole Indiana Marion thing, and I kind of interested in watching that unroll.
Yeah, that's interesting. So we'll now, and that will be a fun one that you'll be able to just watch and not have to click to punch a Nazi in that one. But again, even though that's all you're doing, it's like point and click adventure. It's done really, really well, and it pulls you in, which I was surprised at. Okay, that is enough on that. It is a really good rendition. Secret level, very good. And games have been really good this year. This is probably our last podcast of the year, and it has been amazing. We will be catching up, though, probably around the first of the year, if not on the first of the year. Probably, I think tentatively, we're going to go on the first of the year, and we'll do a little bit of retrospective. We'll do a little bit of looking forward. Great year for video games. A lot of fun things going on. And so if we don't talk to you before, happy holidays, everyone going through the end of the year. This has been a good 2024 for our podcast and for video games in general and everything, I would say. How about you, Sema?
Yeah, very good. I'm just sitting here thinking I might watch Raiders of the Lost Ark now because actually you can watch it on Prime right now.
It's good for movies. Good for movies too.
I mean, it does have ads though.
Yes. All right, but that is for today and for this year. All the feed and subscribe links are on newoverlords.com, and our video is up on YouTube/newoverlords. Please come chat with us in our Discord. We will be online in our Discord pretty much every day throughout the rest of the year. So please come chat with us in there, newoverlords.com/Discord to jump right in. And you can follow on all the social networks while they last, and we'll keep you up to date there too. And with that, we will talk to you soon.
Later, everyone.